You know, our country's in a really divisive time right now, full of conflict. People are drawing a line in the sand and picking a side. It's causing families to divide, for communities and neighbors to fight with each other. You know, all these things are going on in our country right now. And of course, I'm talking about, do beans belong in chili? What y'all think I was talking about? Anyway, so while you're pondering that question, I'll go ahead and welcome everybody watching online, everybody here in the room. You see y'all's faces when you start out all kind of dark and like heavy like that. Like Jake, first service, was over there going, "What are you doing?" I didn't give him a heads up. So, hey, we're so glad that you're here. You know, this is the end of fall break, so y'all got to go back to school tomorrow. People got to go back to work. I saw, pictures and heard stories about cruises and all kinds of trips that were going on this week. So I hope y'all had fun because it's time to get back at it tomorrow. You know, speaking of tomorrow, early voting starts. So all that election craziness is really going to kick off, which I guess what y'all thought I was talking about earlier. But anyway, how awesome has the weather been this week? Like, woo! Cooled off. Man, I love it. We immediately go into like soup and chili season as soon as it gets cold. Melanie's like, "We need some soup." So I'm out there like smoking some vegetables, doing stuff out on the patio, and I'm like sweating while I'm doing it. I'm like, "It's not cold yet." And she's, "It's coming, it's coming." And so it took forever, and by the time I got out there, or finally got done with it, it was like, all right, the wind started blowing, the cold front blew in on Tuesday night. I'm like, okay, we can eat this soup now and feel good about it. But, it got me into the mood, so I'm making chili yesterday, and I'm out there sweating, and we're eating it. It's all spicy, and I'm sweating even more, and I'm like, this is way too early. We jumped the gun on this one for sure, but it still tasted good. Sorry, jump into this. We are in the middle of this conflict series, and so I want to see a show of hands. Who likes beans in their chili? All right, who hates beans in their meat sauce? Or chili, chili. Okay. It's crazy how much people can fight over something like beans and chili. Like, I've seen people going at it online about beans and chili. I'm a part of several Facebook food groups, and they have banned the topic of chili on there. They don't want to see no recipes. They don't want to see any pictures because people will start fighting. They're making death threats. Like, it's crazy. Like, they've banned it. And so they got their moderators watching. As soon as somebody says chili, they're blocked out of there. And so, and it's amazing the things that we'll go to bat for, the things that we'll fight over with other people, the things that we'll jump online and give our strong opinions about. And, that's one of them. So next week, Keith's going to do a survey about putting pineapple on pizza. So, oh, yeah. So just get ready, And obviously, you guys need that conflict series. So we extended it all the way past, to the election. We're doing 4 weeks of this series because I think we all need it. We are doing Boo on Ballard this week on Thursday. Give a hand for Boo on Ballard. Woo. Lots of y'all have come out over the years and helped with that. It's an awesome opportunity to serve together. We have little 30-minute time slots on our website where you can go get signed up, and we keep it kind of short because we want everybody to have a chance to come experience it because it's a lot of fun. We're going to cook up 5,000 hot dogs. We upped it from last year. We're going to do 3,000 bottles of water, lots of cotton candy, lots of handshakes and smiles. And so go out there and have lots of fun. It's a great way to meet other people from New Hope. So you'll be out there like building hot dogs with somebody you maybe haven't met yet, and lots of conversations happen. If you're out there with the kids and maybe walking the, out in the middle of Main Street, Ballard Street down there, there are people everywhere. You're going to want to get out of there for a minute, so bring the kids over, serve over at the hot dog stands or over at the cotton candy, and take a little break for a minute. But it's a great way to meet new people. Like I said, we have been meeting people and talking to people for the last couple of weeks that are coming up to us and saying, "Man, Boo on Ballard made such an impact on us." We had some people 16 years ago was the first time they came around the corner at Boo on Ballard and saw some smiling faces and went, "Wait, this is a church and these people are smiling?" Like, they came over and had a great interaction. And so they've been here for 16 years since then, and we've been hearing stories about people ever since over the last couple of years that have been coming for that as well. So make sure you guys go get signed up. It's going to be a great time. But we are in our series called Constant Conflict. Jake kicked us off last week, and we discussed how conflict's everywhere. We've got wars going on, we've got global conflicts, we've got this election that's happening, so we've got conflict in our governments and in our schools and our colleges and in our homes. It's everywhere. And so last week, Jake kind of focused in on one of the main reasons that we have conflict, and that's anger, the anger issues that we have. So let's take a look at one of the verses that he shared, which is from Ephesians 4:31 through 32. And there it says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. So if you missed Jake's message last week, I encourage you to go watch it, get caught up, and don't miss the next couple of weeks as we get into this whole election season and all of that. So I'm going to pray real quick before we get started. So if you bow your heads. Father, thank you so much for, the opportunity to talk about conflict, and it's something that we all deal with. And I just pray that as we learn more about the way that you have us handle conflict and the way that you designed us to recognize conflict, Lord, that I just ask that you open our hearts to hear what you have for us, that you, anybody that has just a hardness of their heart around conflict, that you just soften their hearts this morning. Lord, we want to be people out in our communities and in our homes being peacemakers, and that are going into conflict looking for resolution more than conflict. So we just ask that you speak to us this morning, and we pray that in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. We're kind of geared for looking for conflict. Like, we kind of look for it everywhere. We're kind of expecting it to happen. If you're scrolling, Instagram, you're waiting for, you're going to see some kind of conflict happen on there. Well, me and my wife were up in the Northeast a couple of weeks ago, and we went up there to go see the leaves changing colors. Oh, so beautiful. And so we're that old now that we go travel the country to see leaves changing colors, And so it really was beautiful. But we were up in like Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire and Massachusetts. We hit 6 states up there. I don't know how you call some of those states, because we drove across one part of New Hampshire from Maine to Massachusetts through New Hampshire, and it was 35 minutes. I don't know how you call that a state, but okay. Anyway, so, while we're up there, we're going to go look at some lighthouses. We're going to go look at a lighthouse. And so as we're driving, we're that old too that we go look at lighthouses. I think we've seen 6 lighthouses this year. It's pretty magical. We haven't been able to go into a single one of them because either they were closed or they just cost too much and we're just going to take pictures, So maybe one of these days I'll get to go in a lighthouse and look at it, look out and see what the view's like. But so we were up in Maine, and we're going to go look at this lighthouse, and we're driving through these neighborhoods, and you could tell by the political signs out, in people's yards that we weren't in Texas anymore, Toto. Different feel, and so as we're going along, lots of signs, lots of stuff, and so we're going along, and we get to this part where there's a long road, kind of a major roadway. There's lots of lights kind of lined up quick, and there's businesses and restaurants, and at the end, I see what looks like a bunch of people like across the road, and I'm like, I told her, I think we got protesters. Like, I thought they were blocking the road, and there's some political protesters over here. I'm looking for the conflict, expecting some conflict. And as we get closer and closer, we go to the next light, and I'm like, well, they don't look very mad. They don't look mean. And we get a little bit closer, and I'm like, well, they got strollers out there. Why are they blocking the road? Well, it was a bend in the road. It was a spot where it bent really quick. And these people are standing in front of this building that has white and red on it. And we get closer, and I see it says Red's Dairy Freeze. So it's like their version of Dairy Queen. And there's 50 people waiting in line for ice cream. And so then I'm conflicted. I'm like, I thought these were protesters. Now there's 50 people waiting in line for ice cream. Like, what kind of crazy people wait in line for ice cream? So we pass it up. We go to the lighthouse. And on the way back, we got in line for ice cream. FOMO was real. We like, this has to be some amazing ice cream if people are waiting this long. They had signs up that said last call or whatever, like last days. So I'm guessing, they're getting ready for winter, and where they, don't leave their houses and all that kind of stuff up there. So, the ice cream was not that good, though. Not as good as Dairy Queen. So, anyway, but, we encounter conflict in various forms, whether it's with our family, at school, with colleagues, at work. It's a natural part of life, and it's all about kind of how we handle conflict. So, conflict in itself is not a sin. We're all conflicted. We're all going to have conflicts. Jesus had conflicts, but it's how we handle the conflicts which can turn into sin. And so constructive conflict, is vital for growth. And so here at New Hope, we give feedback a lot. Whenever, I'm going to get some feedback about my message. First service, I'm going to get some good feedback from first service. But, we were processing this week with some of our friends from Africa that were here, and just talking about all the different opportunities we give for feedback on how the message went, how worship went, all those things. And so we're always opening ourselves up for feedback, but that's also a form of conflict, because sometimes it can, you might hear something that hurts your feelings, or you might hear something that's not the best thing in the world. So we're always kind of looking for that conflict. It's all over the place, but constructive conflict can be very important. And we all need to hear it. We all need to hear things that we can improve on and how we can grow and all that. So, but also conflict can hurt. It's painful. We feel pressure or pain when we're in conflict, especially when it's somebody that we love or somebody that we care about, or it's this conflict that's gone on and on for a long time. We can feel that in our souls. We feel the pressure from that. And we all know the things that get us into conflict, right? Like the things, for me, driving sometimes can get me into some conflicts, some internal conflicts, never any external, but I can, I saw people first service all kind of looking at their spouses, so I guess all y'all are good on that whole driving thing. But, there's lots of things that can get under our skin. It's these little things that like really kind of push our buttons. They push our little pressure points where we're going, man, there's something here. There's something that's pulling me into conflict. And so my message today is called Pressure Points. I don't know if we ever put that up earlier. So we're going to jump into this message and just talk about there's ways that God has designed us through these pressure points of recognizing when we're in conflict with somebody because it's hurtful, it's painful, but also some ways that we can navigate through that pain and find resolution in conflicts. So let's jump into it. We all have physical pressure points all over our body. So we have these points on our body that it's mostly where nerves come together, where you have these different places on your body where if a little bit of pressure is applied or agitated, it can cause us pain. It can cause us to react. And so these things are designed to, whenever we're feeling pain, to kind of cause us to get out of the way. Like, hey, you're in a painful situation. Move away from this thing, or you need to change what you're doing to get away from this. And so I grew up in a household where pressure points were used all the time because my dad was a police officer who taught other police officers how to do defensive tactics. He was a defensive tactics instructor. And so he would come on and use that stuff on us. And so as a kid, which is kind of dangerous because, you're like 8 years old and your dad's coming and showing you all these different moves. Like, hey, here's how you can knock somebody out real quick. And it was like, okay, let's go try this on my brother. And stuff like that. So we would, we were doing that. We were doing it to all the neighborhood kids, our dogs, mom sometimes, and not all of them are going to knock you out. Sometimes it's just, annoyance kind of stuff. But he would come home and do all that stuff on us as homework. And so, but years later, I went to the police academy and I started learning why we use those things and why we would teach those things to police officers. And a lot of times it's, they're used as attention getters first off. Like if somebody's not doing what you're asking them to do, you're trying to get somebody under control, it gets their attention. It kind of gets them out of the craziness that they're going in sometimes. Sometimes it's all about just getting somebody under control. And more than anything, it saves lives because it limits the amount of force that's needed to get somebody under control. And you learn real quick which of these pressure points really work well on you and which don't. Like some that you can just kind of grin and bear it and push through it. And then some that'll put you on your butt. Like a good old dead leg for me. So you got a nerve here called the common peroneal. You get hit right in that thing, and I'll drop every time. And so when I was in the police academy, we would circle up in the mats. We'd have our little PT days, and everybody's got their shorts on, and you got your fake belt on, and doing all this stuff and giving commands. But we would start doing these pressure points on each other. And you kind of watch everybody in the room all circled up, and everybody's doing these different points, and you can see which ones really work on people because they're going, they're screaming and yelling, and some that just kind of grin and bear it, and they'll just, keep on doing it. And so I was going to have somebody come up. We kind of ran out of time. I was going to have somebody come up and start doing some of these. I thought, that might look Laddie. Ooh, that's a good candidate right there. You know a little bit about this stuff, though, so I think you'd probably fight it more than anything. But we kind of ran out of time. So I was going to show you guys one of these. There's one called the mandibular angle. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? You've got this little spot back here where your jaw comes to a point. If you kind of reach back there and feel, you'll find a little soft spot there, like a sensitive spot where these nerves come together. And so that's one of them. You push on that, and you can get some compliance pretty quick. If you got somebody that's on the ground, and you're like, hey, put your hands behind your back, and they're going, no, I'm not doing it. You push on that thing, more than likely, they're going to throw their hands behind their back, especially if you put a lot of resistance, a lot of pressure on there. So whenever you're feeling that, the more you fight it and the more you press against it, the more that pressure you're going to feel, the more pain you're going to feel. You feel relief whenever you say, okay, I give in, whenever you kind of back away from that pressure and not fight it. And I can't help but think about how God has designed us where these pressure points not only work on us physically, but also on our hearts and on our souls and how we kind of interact with other people. You know, when we're in conflict, whether it's internal or external, we feel that pain, we feel that pressure. God designed us that way, that we're not just going to keep doing the things that we're doing that's causing pain and damage with other people or within ourselves. He designs us to look at those things and to recognize whenever we're in pain. And he's saying, hey, this needs your attention. This thing hurts for a reason. It's hurting other people for a reason. If somebody's telling you, hey, this thing hurts, we need to be looking at it. And it's a way of God designed us to say, hey, this thing needs some extra attention, or you need to get away from this thing. So God doesn't cause our pain, but he'll definitely use it for our benefit and for his glory. So before we jump into some ways, healthy ways of recognizing when we're in conflict and some healthy ways of navigating it, what are some unhealthy ways of navigating conflict when you're in conflict with somebody? And y'all can, this is an all play, everybody can throw some stuff out. What do y'all got? Unhealthy ways of dealing with conflict. Say loud. Violence, avoidance, yelling, blame. Okay, blame shifting. This side of the room is real quiet. What we got? Anger, numbing. Yeah. So some that I just wrote down were ignoring it. We can rationalize it. We can normalize it. We can push through it. We can just double down and go, grin and bear it. Sometimes we dull it with substance abuse, with drugs and alcohol. Being a police officer for 20 years had lots of times where we would run into somebody that was under the influence, where we're trying to get somebody under control, where because of the substances in their bodies, these pressure points don't work at all. We had this guy one time that was high on PCP, of all things, and you don't feel nothing on that. And so this guy is running around about 3 o'clock in the morning in his pajama pants, and he's jumping on top of police cars trying to pull the light bars off of them and doing all this. So we finally get about 6 guys. We've got this guy. We're trying to get his hands behind his back. I'm new at this point, so I'm like, all right, it's time to use what I learned in the police academy. Time for pressure points. And it's like nothing's working. Like you're trying to push on this, do this. The last thing I remembered while I was on top of this guy is I've got his foot, and that's all I had, and he's picking me up off the ground and dropping me while I've got his foot. So I kind of twisted his foot about 6 times around. He still felt no pain, still wasn't reacting. Finally got him under control. He's all right. Whew, yeah. So they don't work on everybody. But if we're dulling our senses with drugs and alcohol, then we're causing more damage than really we need to be. And so I think that's a way that, God designed us to feel pain, to feel these things. And so, because it lets us know something's not right. If you got a pain in your back, something's not right. Something's out of line. Something's out of whack. And we do that in our own lives too, with our family, that if we're dulling it with substance abuse, with drugs and alcohol, we can be really numb to what's going on in our family. And we're not recognizing, hey, I'm causing pain here. Or, I'm causing pain with my kids or with my wife. So we want to make sure that we're always thinking about that, and sometimes pain, we need a little bit of that to wake us up. So, conflict is a part of life. It's often said that conflict is actually a sign of life. It means that we are engaging with others, we're expressing our views. However, it's crucial to approach conflict with a mindset of resolution rather than confrontation. So we want to be making sure when we're in conflict with somebody, we don't want this thing to go on forever. We need to look at this, that we're looking for some resolution. We don't want to keep fighting with people. In our journey of faith, we're called to reflect Christ's character, which includes how we engage with others. And so Jesus himself faced conflicts during his ministry, yet he handled it with grace, with truth, with love, and compassion. So we want to make sure we're modeling that and doing that when we're having conflict with others. And sometimes we got to stop and think about it. So let's go over 5 steps to recognize conflict. We'll kind of wrap up with this and how we navigate it with grace. So we want to recognize the conflict and navigate it with grace. So the first one is that we want to acknowledge that there's conflict. We want to seek to understand. We want to communicate with kindness. We want to find common ground. And then we want to forgive and move forward. So let's jump into the first one, which is acknowledge the conflict. We want to acknowledge that that conflict can arise from misunderstandings, from differing values, or unmet expectations. We know that there's conflict because we feel the pain that comes from it. So we either feel it in ourselves or somebody else is feeling pain and they're communicating that with us, or we see it in the way that we interact with them. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you're going on and you see them start kind of squirming and you can tell something's going on, more than likely you're in conflict and you're sharing something or your views may be in conflict with how they see things. So we just want to make sure we're being aware of that stuff. So when we acknowledge conflict, it means that we bring it out to the light. So we can say, hey, what I'm just saying right there, I felt like it was maybe in conflict with the way you see things. I can see you were getting a little bit worked up about that. Maybe talk about those things. So James 1:19-20 reminds us that everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So when you feel a conflict arising, take a breath. You don't have to respond right then. You don't have to defend yourself right then. Take a breath. Maybe even say, hey, I'm going to step away from this conversation if you feel a conflict arising. Something you can do is start thinking about, all right, so what was it about that conflict? I started feeling like I'm getting worked up. What was it about that? Was it that they were saying something that was false about me? Or were they saying something that was true about me that I know that I need to work on that. I know I need to do some work on this ab I got here. There's things I need to do. So a lot of times it's something internal. So take a breath, step away, and maybe write those things down and come up with, a solution there. So after we acknowledge the conflict, we want to seek to understand before being understood. This involves actively listening to the other person's perspective. Often we're so focused on defending our own position that we forget to truly hear what somebody else has to say when they're trying to share with us. So we want to make sure we're seeking understanding. And it's more than just hearing words, it's about empathy. We want to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. We want to hear their side of the story. Like, how did you come to this? How do you, if we're having conflict, I'd love to hear your story. Like, a lot of times it's going to come from family issues. It's going to come from their past and the way that they've seen things, the ways they have experienced things other than you have. And so one practical tip here is that when you feel conflict, when you feel that coming up, use words like, hey, I hear what you're saying. Is this? Instead of saying, hey, I feel like you're wrong in this. I want to tell you my side of the story. So ask questions that are reflecting on what they've got going on. So let's look at Philippians 2:3-4 here. And it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Okay, so after we have acknowledged the conflict, we have sought to understand somebody else before being understood, we also want to communicate with kindness. So that's number 3. And so let's take a look at Ephesians 4:29. It states, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So when we're discussing a conflict, use I instead of you. And so when you go into a situation and instead of saying, you never listened to me, say something like, I don't feel heard when this happens. That helps to break down defenses and for people not to feel attacked whenever we're having conversations. And y'all, I'm preaching to the choir because I need all these things more than anybody. I got to put some to use this week when I was being a little bit of a knucklehead. So, which is always going to happen whenever you're going to share a message about something. That week, it's going to pop up, just like McKenna said. So, so a practical tip is before discussing a conflict, maybe take a moment to pray about it. And, ask God for his wisdom to communicate with kindness, and for it to be an effective conversation, and for the other person to be receptive of it. And so, you can even, I encourage, if they're a believer or if they're open to it, pray with somebody before you have the conversation. Just, God, hey, will you be in our conversation? Will you give us the kind words to say? Will you let us, hey, we care for each other. We want the best for each other. We don't want to be in conflict. And Lord, I just pray you come into this conversation. Amen. Something as simple as that can help break down so many barriers whenever you go into a conversation and somebody's like they're on the attack. Like they've got their list. They're ready. All the things that you've done wrong, it helps break down a lot of barriers there. And so that's a little technique Keith taught me last year, and I've been putting into effect when I have some hard conversations with people, and it's a really great way to handle conflict. So after we have acknowledged the conflict, we have sought to understand, we've communicated with kindness, we want to find common ground. Finding common ground can be incredibly powerful. It shifts the focus from the problem to shared goals. So like, what do we have in common? What are the things that about this? So if you're arguing about something in your household, let's sit down first and talk about all the things that we have in common. All right, we want to have a house where, God is honored. We want to love each other. We want to raise our kids. We want to do these things. Like, go down the list of all the things that we have in common, and then let's go talk about the hard thing. Or maybe at work, hey, we want to have a successful project. We want to do, what are all the things that we have in common? And so often we'll find that we have way more in common than we have different in our conflicts. Romans 12:18 says, if it is all possible, for as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So we always want to be making sure we're looking for peace. We're looking for that common ground. And you can come up with a list of shared values and goals that you have in common. This is a great little practical tip. Sit down with somebody and write those things out. Look at the things that you have in common rather than what you are in conflict about. So once we've acknowledged that there's conflict, we have sought to understand before being understood. We have communicated with kindness. We found some common ground. Now it's time to forgive and move forward. And this one can be the really hard one for some people. I've been there as well. But it's a vital aspect of conflict resolution. It's important to recognize that forgiveness is as much for our benefit as it is for somebody else. Once the conflict has been addressed, it's essential to practice forgiveness. So holding on to grudges only serves to harm ourselves and to harm others that we want to have relationship with. Let's look at Colossians 3:13, where it says, we are reminded to bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has grievances against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. So forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget about what happened or that we allow harmful behavior to continue, but it does mean that we are going to work on our resentment and our bitterness towards somebody else that can weigh us down. By forgiving, we free ourselves to move forward and rebuild trust. When we hold on to grudges, we hinder our own peace and our own personal spiritual growth with Jesus. Jesus was the ultimate model of forgiveness. When up on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He was beaten. He was lied against. All of his friends had left him. All the people that were for him and following him around are now saying, crucify him, kill him. He had every reason to be mad. He had every reason to be upset. Yet his ultimate thing was forgiveness. That was his ultimate act, was forgiveness. And so he forgives each and every one of us. And so when we take that into consideration in the things that we're dealing with in our lives, is somebody trying to kill me right now? Is somebody trying to hang me on a cross in front of a bunch of people naked? Or have all of my friends left me? Let's weigh that with what Jesus did for us and always look to the cross and to act the way that Jesus acted. If you're struggling with forgiveness, you can write a letter to somebody and not even send it. You can write out all the things that they've done, all the things that you're in conflict about, and don't even send it. Or you can send it if you want to. Sometimes, you might need to send it, but Abraham Lincoln was known to have a desk drawer full of letters that he would write to people that were his adversaries and naysayers and the people that were out trying to kill him, all these things, and he would slip them in a drawer. But it helps get that out. That process helps get those emotions out. It helps you to move forward into a place of forgiveness. Let's remember that conflict can be a powerful catalyst for growth and for deeper relationships when approached with grace and love. We want to acknowledge that the pain and the pressure that we feel in conflict, we want to seek to understand others. We want to communicate kindly. We want to find common ground with others, and we want to practice forgiveness. Let's strive to be peacemakers in our home and in our workplaces and in our communities, reflecting the character of Christ in all that we do. So as we go out into this week and things start getting crazy with all this election stuff, let's model that. Let's interact with people with love and with tolerance, with understanding, and let people go, what's going on? What's different about these people? They're not acting like everybody else. What's the deal? I follow Jesus. That's what's different. So let's remember that all of us are works in progress. We're all on a journey. the people that we're interacting with, that we're in conflict with. We're all on a journey ourselves. Let's give everybody that same grace and that same love that Jesus gave. Let's go ahead and close in prayer. Father, thank you that you're the ultimate conflict resolutioner. You find us all messing it up all the time. And Lord, you continue to forgive us over and over and over. And you sent your son to be the ultimate sign of forgiveness on the cross, Lord. And he took all of our sin, all of our shame, all of our guilt upon the cross and said, you are forgiven. Lord, help us all to each forgive ourselves. Lord, help us to forgive others. Help us to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Help us to understand where other people are coming from and spend the time to listen to their stories and hear where they're coming from. Lord, help us to be quick to say, I'm sorry. Father, help us to spread your love and your peace and your grace throughout any of the interactions we have throughout our weeks. And we're so thankful to be your children. It's in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. If you're looking for ways to serve here at New Hope, we have many areas ready to welcome someone like you. Just email your name and phone number to admin@newhopechristian.org and we'll get you connected. Also, if New Hope has impacted your life in any way and you'd like to partner with us, you can go to our website at newhopechristian.org. Click the Giving tab and set up reoccurring giving. Thank you for being a blessing to us and helping others.